NASCAR Cup Series race. Here are your hosts, Kevin Batstone, NASCAR Sky, and Jeff Davis.
Welcome back, race fans, to another episode of Mash the Gas podcast, your premier home for everything NASCAR Cup Series racing. My name is Kevin Batstone. Joining me shortly is Mr. Jeff Davis and Miss NASCAR Sky. We're here to break down all of the action from the AutoTrader EchoPark Automotive 400 from the Dover Motor Speedway, Dover, Delaware. Jeff, a lot of action out there. We had the humidity, the heat, we had the rain, we had it all. But most importantly, who mashed the gas the hardest?
Well, that'd definitely be the number 11 of Denny Hamlin, man. First driver of the year to get 4 wins. And man, what a race it was, getting his 58th career win. He's just inching his way closer and closer into that top 10 all-time win list, trying to get there with Kevin Harvick. But yeah, Denny Hamlin mashed it.
Yeah, we all really expected, I think, the Toyotas to be good, especially Denny. I think one of you called him last week. I think it was Kevin. I think I might be wrong, but yeah, I mean, we kind of knew where that was going. I mean, he held off Seabell. He really did earn it. I think Denny really earned his win at Dover. Not that he doesn't earn any of them, but I mean, he really had to hold off Seabell. He had to do a lot of aero blocking, which, this new car makes it very easy to aero block. And some people, don't like that. I'm sure Seabell wasn't very happy with that. But then, Seabell in and of himself had his own issues, spinning himself out like twice there. But not only did he get to hold off Seabell, he also had to hold off Chase Briscoe there at the end and company. There was a few others floating like Bowman that he had to hold off. But yeah, it was really impressive for Denny. I'm really impressed with Chase Briscoe too. I mean, he's really turned it around so far.
Yeah, those guys are definitely starting to bang on all cylinders, with Chase taking over. I think the notebook from the 19, we talked about this last week, has really helped with what Truex did in that organization. But I mean, back to Denny, just an incredible performance to be on old tires, right? He knew these guys were coming on 4 fresh field goods behind him, 8 to go. This thing goes into overtime. He's got to hold him off again. If Chase Briscoe was about 2 or 3 inches further, he would have cleared Denny off turn 2, and that would have been a really difficult pass for Denny to have to make. So I thought it was really good, clean racing there between teammates, beating and banging a little bit, coming to get the white flag. That was a good JGR win for those guys. Denny comes out with the fastest lap. He's now the number 1 seed heading into the playoffs with 4 wins. Denny's looking rocking.
Yeah, it definitely was a Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs day. I mean, with Seabell, spinning out there twice, yeah, it really amazed me that he just spun right out. It's really unfortunate for him, but taking out the 24, he was up there all day long. Those guys are going back and forth. Yeah, it was just like I said, it was Hendrick and Joe Gibbs all day long. And Chase Briscoe, he did finally get up there. I mean, he raced Denny really, really clean. I thought he was going to get him on that one turn towards the end. He kind of had him, a few inches ahead going into the turn, but just didn't have what it took. But, luckily their teammates still ran good. And even though, the 24 car of old William Byron and the 20 car of Seabell wound up kind of dropping down in the ranks, Gibbs and Hendrick Motorsports still got P1 through 6.
Well, and with no practice and no qualifying, Sky, that was the other thing. We got rained out. So these guys had to just show up and run what they have. That's extremely tough to do. I mean, you're going off last year's notes. It was way hotter this time. Different tire from Goodyear. This Goodyear soft tire, I thought, ended up holding up a little bit better than we expected going onto the concrete surface there. But with no practice and no qualifying, to see guys like Kyle Larson and some others come from middle of the back of the pack all the way into the top 10 was definitely impressive runs for those guys.
I mean, definitely. Anytime they have to do it with, no practice and qualifying, it's definitely impressive. And that's why you see, some of the same names doing it. Like, that's why I'm not surprised Hamlin won. I mean, he's a veteran. He's been doing this for so long. I remember there was years and years he could never win Dover, and he just studied. And I'm pretty sure he even said that he used Truex's notes, that he's been using Truex's notes, especially at places like Dover. So it's just been, I don't know. It definitely was a Toyota and Hendrick type of day. Although tough for Seabell. He's been kind of having it a little rough. I mean, we haven't seen him win. I mean, if you want to count the All-Star, besides the All-Star, since the beginning of the year, I think he won a stage. It was only like the second stage he's won this year. That it's good to have those wins, but once the playoffs hit, I mean, you're gonna have to turn it up. You don't want to get, kicked out early. And then same thing with Byron. I mean, he's been getting caught up in things left and right. I think Chase Elliott just surpassed him. So teams are having good runs, and then other teams are just not. So they're just, I don't know. It's tough for them, and I don't want to see Seabell go out. He's one of those drivers that I really, really like, but I don't know. I feel like he was so hot, he burned up so quick, and then it's just like he has been so lukewarm since then.
Yeah, Seabell, I mean, he was running really, really good. And so to see, like I said, to see him spin out twice there, and he did really get lucky with the rain delay and being able to claw back to where he was. But yeah, definitely really unfortunate for the 24 car. You know, but overall, thought it was a really good race. I thought it was kind of funny when the rain delay did start to end there, and they were calling the drivers back to the track. Kyle Larson was missing. I guess he was sitting in his bus, sitting there on old X, sitting there sending out tweets, and kind of had to run out there. And I guess luckily for Denny Hamlin and the rain delay, Denny does not wear that cool suit, and he was having a hard time with the heat during this race. He even mentioned it on the radio. I want a block of ice. It's just so damn hot. So he was able to go out and change his cool suit in between, the rain delay and getting back in there. But yeah, overall, it was just a really fun day, and luckily, he can go off of Martin Truex Jr.'s notes, and I think he even said something about old, JJ, Jimmy Johnson, who's won there 11 times. Just phenomenal stats there with Jimmy. But I was kind of surprised Jimmy didn't run this race.
Yeah, no question. Denny's up there with the greats now. I mean, two away from tying Harvick. He's going to be top 10 of all time, possibly on a championship year run at 44 years old. Denny's definitely proven the haters wrong. But I was listening to him on Actions Detrimental. When that rain delay hit there, first of all, I want to applaud NASCAR for getting the track dry and getting that race going in under an hour. We had plenty of daylight. If they would have called that race, I think I would have been pissed. Denny probably wouldn't have minded. But he basically said that when they threw the car cover, the cover over it for the rain, it just held all that heat like it insulated the car for the brake heat, the engine heat. It was so hot out there that day that he said it was even hotter when he got back in after the rain delay for those last 14 laps. So those guys definitely had to hold it together out there. No cool suit, drinking warm liquid. I mean, just brutal with that humidity. It felt like 145 degrees inside of that race car. So, to keep your head in the game, stay focused with that kind of heat. I mean, it definitely takes athleticism for sure, and that's why these guys train the way they do. You see Kyle Larson doing hot yoga and all this stuff to try to, condition their bodies for these really, really hot races. This is the latest we've ever come to Dover. This was used to be a spring and a fall race. So it's interesting that they're putting some of these hot, humid races right in the middle of summer with only 5 to go to the playoffs, guys. We're headed to another hot one, and that's Indy this week. But all in all, I think Dover was Dover. It's the Monster Mile. It's fast. We really didn't see a ton of fuel strategy. Tires were kind of an issue, but not really. You had Denny stay out and win the race, so 4 tires really wasn't necessarily the call there. But, if it had gone the other way, because even Denny said Chris Gale, that was a pretty aggressive call to keep him out on the racetrack to try to hold off these fresh tires. But once again, Denny went out there and earned it.
I definitely don't get how people say that these drivers aren't athletes, especially when you're bringing up the heat. I mean, I remember when they would show like the little thermometer, how hot it is inside the car, and some of these tracks, like you said, it gets like 140, 100, 120, 140 in the car. I mean, that's just ridiculous. One thing that got brought up a lot, especially with Denny and how much he was aero blocking, and like I brought it up already, just how easy it is in this next gen to do that. And it sucks to watch on TV because you can't really see the air, so it doesn't look like there's much happening. You're like, well, why can't this driver pass the guy? Like he's right there. Why can't he do it? Another thing that got brought up, though, kind of in line with the aero blocking, and I know Kyle Busch, he seems to always have a lot to say about stuff like this, but they were bringing up the rear view camera and how it's just, drivers will sit there and just watch that rear view and cut off lines and, kind of help towards that aero blocking. And Kyle Busch said that he thinks that, well, first of all, he doesn't want the rear view camera anymore, but he's saying that if he thinks that if you want the rear view camera, you can't have a spotter. He said it's like one or the other. So how do you guys feel? I don't know how I would feel confident just pulling a spotter completely, but I mean, I get what he's trying to say.
Yeah, I understand what he means, but you can't have a spotter. You're right, Sky. You have to have a spotter in these races. I do kind of like the old school, cars though. I do like some of the features that they don't have now. I don't like them. Some of it's like the rear view camera. I just don't think it takes a little bit out of the racing itself. And like you said, old number 8, old Kyle Busch, he does like to throw it out there just like Denny Hamlin does. They'll talk their opinions, and they're veterans of the sport, so they kind of deserve it. Even old Richard Childress was actually talking to Kyle Busch on the radio right at the end of the race, saying, "Hey, we need to get some race cars out here." So they really they need some good equipment because Kyle Busch is getting really frustrated. He's one of the best. Obviously, he's in the top 10 as far as all time win list with 63 wins. So to see Kyle Busch having the slump that he's got is just it's kind of sad this year.
Yeah, it is. And we've touched on RCR a few times, but back to your question there, Sky. I think we get rid of it. Get rid of the rear view camera. And I think almost any veteran driver, I heard Denny say it, I've heard Kyle Busch say it, I think Joey would be on board. Get rid of that thing. I mean, first of all, Denny said it's more difficult than texting and driving to look at that camera and run your line into the corner. So it's not an easy thing to do. In fact, it can be even a bit of a distraction, but it makes that aero blocking much easier for the drivers to do. It's not really something we can, like you mentioned, see on TV. We don't see the air, but the aero blocking, I mean, we saw it all day. We saw Denny Hamlin get mad at Ty Dillon for trying to stay on the lead lap, on fresher tires there. So get rid of that camera. I think go back to old school, give them a rear view where they can look up, on their windshield and look behind them and have your spotter up there. That's the way I want to see it. And Jeff, to your point about RCR, yeah, basically Childress is tired of going out there and getting their ass kicked. I mean, week in and week out, you got one of the best drivers in the sport. They can't seem to find victory lane. Decent run for Kyle. I mean, he was up top five for the first stage, second stage, brought it home P11, not where those guys want to be. And so my understanding is that heads are rolling over there at RCR from the engineers to the engine builders to everything. RCR expects better out of these guys. And we've touched on it. They're not a Hendrick. They're not a Gibbs. And with a name like Richard Childress, they need to be in that conversation.
I definitely agree, and I don't see, why they can't be. I mean, the cars are as close as, they've ever been to each other. It doesn't make sense. I mean, Kyle Busch, I feel like Kyle Busch is performing really well for the equipment that he's in. Not, which I can't even say that honestly, because I feel like he is really good, but he makes so many careless mistakes. Like I always talk about him on pit road. He's always speeding. He's always doing these dumb little things. I just feel like the morale maybe isn't there, or maybe the culture just isn't there. I don't know if it's just down to the equipment. I feel like it's just got to be something else. I feel like it's like they have all the pieces for the puzzle, but they're like not putting it together correctly.
Yeah, I wonder if he's just starting to slip a little bit, as he's getting older and getting closer and closer to retirement. Kyle Busch has always been up there, and just like you mentioned, Sky, these cars are closer now than they ever have been, and that's why we're seeing so many guys winning over the last couple of years that we're not used to seeing in the top 10 at these races. So I don't know what it is over at Childress. I don't know if it's the engineers. I'm not sure quite what it is. So, again, really unfortunate for them. But hey, I did want to give a shout out to Sky's favorite driver, Joey Logano, getting his 600 career start. I thought that was pretty darn cool for him.
It's definitely pretty cool. It was good when NASCAR posted the little flashbacks of all his years, right down memory lane. I was like, oh my gosh, it makes me feel like a kid again seeing all those photos.
Makes me feel old. I've been watching his entire career, and even before he was in the sport, the Gordon years and everything. It's crazy to see, to think that I've watched Joey race 600 races. That's pretty wild. But veteran of the sport, champion of the sport. He was at the ESPYS last week. I don't believe he won that driver category. I think that went over to one of the F1 guys, but still cool to get an honorable mention. At the ESPYS there. I guess Shane Gillis crushed it. I didn't see any of it, but that was kind of cool that Joey got to be a part of that. And then the New England 900 was happening. Old Cletus McFarland, Ryan Preece, the hometown kid, was able to hold off Greg Biffle up there at Stafford Springs. I don't know if you guys caught any of that action. And shout out to Connor Zilic. This kid is unbelievable. I mean, wins another Xfinity race. Sure, put an asterisk next to it because it was a rain-shortened race. But Connor Zilic might be on one of the best rookie performances that I've ever seen.
I think he is for sure. I think we're going to see him really soon running full time in the Cup. So it's going to be pretty cool to get him up there. But, with Joey Logano, I just kind of want to touch back on him. He's got 37 wins, I think, in the Cup Series and 30 wins as far as the Xfinity Series goes. Obviously, he's got 3 championships under his belt. I don't see him getting up there in the top 10 all time win list unless he runs for quite a while longer, because it's tough to get up there in that all time win list. So, but again, shout out to Joey Logano for that. But it is interesting, Kevin, like you're chatting about, to see him and kind of like Brad Keselowski both coming in right around the same time. And sliced bread when he first came in, that was his old nickname. And Joey, now as a veteran, it's just weird to see these guys getting up there.
I mean, it definitely is, but he's only 35, I think, something like that. So, I mean, if he stays on like the Hamlin trajectory, I mean, Hamlin's 44 and winning multiple times a season, so you never know. I mean, he might still have a few. I still think he got at least another championship left in him, maybe 2. I think he'll end with 5. Maybe that's pretty crazy to say, but overall, I really liked Dover. I mean, I feel like it was a good Dover race. I wasn't expecting something super, super spectacular. I was a little I don't know what the right word is. Interested to see these tires. I don't think that they really had any practice on them, or like they didn't do any testing or anything on them. So it was kind of just like throwing them to the wolves. So I was a little interesting to see that. And stage one I felt like was pretty promising, but after that it kind of just died down a lot. At least that's what I thought anyway.
I really thought that Elliott Nation there was going to get their whole day, everything they could wish for. I mean, Chase ran fantastic. Led 238 laps. He was the car to beat. He had the preferred pit stop there on pit road there at the end, but just kind of got outbeat. When those guys fell off the jack, I felt like that kind of killed their momentum. I mean, still, Brian home P6 was in the top five all day, but just a couple mistakes there away, I think, from him being in contention to win this race and put the whole thing together. And he has now overtaken the overall points lead. So he's not seeded one going into the playoffs, but numerically he is in position to win the regular season championship. And, all the bashing and all the shit talking that Chase gets and, NASCAR's most popular driver just might go out there and win this thing on consistency.
Guys pulling up the driver's points earlier, so we can chat about that a little bit because when I saw that Chase Elliott did take that number one spot away from William Byron, it's because of how consistent he's been running, for the last 10 races or so. I know we've talked about it in the last few episodes about how many points without that win, before he got that win, he was right up there. I mean, as far as points go, I knew he was going to point his way in. So to see him up there, and it's crazy to see three of the top three spots, Hendrick drivers, Chase Elliott, William Byron, and Kyle Larson. Even though Denny Hamlin has won four races, as far as drivers' points, Hendrick's still the team to beat, which kind of surprises me with the wins that Denny has. But just the consistency that Chase Elliott and William Byron have had, that's why they're right up there.
Yeah, and Denny, I think he's also down a race because he didn't go to Mexico. So I
True.
know that that'll probably definitely hurt him there. But it's I'm glad that how do I word this? It is Chase Elliott is very much a sleeper to me. Like I feel like, a handful of weeks ago he was like fifth, fourth in points or whatever. Now he's first, and I think Tyler Reddick's fifth. I mean, I look at these people and I'm like, these drivers, and they're not like flashy. They're not people that we're talking about every single week. Maybe Chase Elliott the last few weeks, yeah, but for Reddick being as high up as he is, for doing as little as he is, I really feel is pretty impressive. But on the flip side of that, we have the top three that we're saying, of Hendrick. And then you have Bowman, who's not quite on the cut line, but there's five races left. He's sitting 14th right now, plus 63. But all it takes is two more winners, and now all of a sudden, you're right on the bubble. So hopefully Bowman can get it figured out there.
I think he will. I mean, these are, I wouldn't say some of his best racetracks coming up, but I think they're places where if you look at some of his average finishes, if Bowman can just kind of average right around 10th, 11th, he's going to point his way in. But if for some reason we get four different winners between now and Darlington, that conversation piece of being on the bubble and who's going to point their way in is going to get really interesting as it comes down to Daytona of all places. But how about Ty Dillon, guys? Once again, Ty Dillon is in the final in this bracket challenge. I mean, at this point, we got to ride the Dillon train the whole way. I mean, it's Ty versus Ty show going into Indy. Like I said last week, no matter who he's going up against, it's going to be difficult because I think you have to give a nod to Gibbs being in better equipment, of course. But all it takes is a wreck, a blown right front tire, speeding on pit road, and all of a sudden Ty Dillon just might win this whole thing.
It's going to take a little bit of luck. I mean, Ty Dillon, Ty Gibbs, it's going to be very interesting. I think it's just a matter of not getting caught up in the fray. But, we don't usually see a whole lot of carnage, as I like to call it, out there at the Brickyard. It just doesn't happen. The track's big enough. It's wide enough that these guys really don't get caught up. I mean, yeah, we'll see, one or two guys getting a wreck, but it's not like four or five different drivers get caught up in the field just from, being in the wrong spot at the wrong time. So it's the incidents as far as cautions go, besides stage cautions, obviously, really kind of it's an interesting race. It's fun to watch. It's obviously an iconic track, but I don't think we're going to see the wrecks that we've been seeing in the last few races.
I definitely agree, but if it's some people that do it, it's definitely the Cup Series. I've seen them do some crazy things over the years. I remember the Roval the first year. Everybody just went, right into turn one and wrecked. So we'll definitely have to wait and see. But yeah, Ty versus Ty. I am so excited for Ty Dillon. I want him to go all the way because, at the end of the day, I think Ty Dillon probably needs the million more than Ty Gibbs probably needs the million. And I mean, he's working really hard for it. I mean, he knocked out Bowman, I remember, or I think it was Bowman or whoever. He was racing really, really aggressive. So he just I don't know. I'm really happy for him. And speaking on the other tie, on the flip side, Ty Gibbs, my bad. He is 19th right now, outside of the bubble there. He's definitely kind of like in a must-win type situation. I mean, I could see him winning at Indy. Maybe he finished P5 here at Dover, so I don't know. There's just a few drivers. Kyle Busch is out by 39. I don't know if I see him. I don't even see him pointing his way in or winning. I don't think that he can get that done. But Ryan Preece, he's the one out at 17th, right under Bubba Wallace, who's in by 16 there. I don't know. Priest and Wallace, that's two drivers that I feel like can go either way. I mean, Priest has been, I think, arguably probably better than Wallace this year.
Yeah, it looks that way. And I would almost say anybody right around 15th on back needs to consider themselves in a must-win situation. I mean, Bowman being 63 to the good, we just talked about that. Reddick, if Reddick can just kind of mind his P's and Q's, he might be able to just ride his way into the playoffs. But Bubba Wallace for sure, Ryan Preece, I mean, any one of these guys can come in and upset. I mean, Michael McDowell could go out there and win Watkins Glen, barring anything happening to SVG here in a few weeks, or AJ Allmendinger. There's still opportunities. We got Daytona coming, three really kind of generic ovals, right? We go to Indy this weekend, and then we're going to Iowa, and then we have Richmond coming up. And so a lot of opportunities here for, I think, one of these guys to go out and snag a win. I'd like to see it come down to that. I want to see you have to win to get in, none of this point your way in stuff.
Ryan Preece, I'll tell you what, I think Sky's right on that one too. I think he's done a lot better than Bubba Wallace, even though they're flopped in points right there on the cutoff line. I mean, Bubba Wallace right now has gone 100 races without a win. That's quite a few races to go. As far as the winless. So I think Bubba Wallace really's got some work ahead of him. But I didn't know even Kyle Busch you're talking about, Sky. He's going to have to win. He doesn't think he can point his way in himself. So I think it's going to be really tough with these upcoming tracks, with the diversity we've got, between the Brickyard and, like Kevin was talking about, the road courses that we've got. So, we were talking about fantasy the other day, you and I were, Kevin, and it's like, run them if you got them, because we already know who a lot of these road track ringers are right now. Easy to use them in your fantasy league. So, when you've got guys like Kyle Larson right now running as hot as he did and actually winning last year in Indy, I think he's going to become I think he's over his slump. I really do. I think Kyle Larson is really going to start coming up here. So, if you got Kyle Larson, run him.
Yeah, I have a good friend. His name is Zach. He's a big Larson fan. And we talk about Larson a lot. And I almost wonder, is this slump that he's in, this quote unquote slump, is it intentional? I know that probably sounds bad, but if you think about like how people talk about Penske over the last few years and their playoff runs, they're not always the flashiest. They're rarely the flashiest in the regular season. They're not always winning a trillion races and doing everything. They do what they need to do to get by to the playoffs, and then they up the heat. And yeah, the last 3 years has happened, but eventually the other teams are going to catch on to that. And Kyle Larson, he is such a smart racer, not just in NASCAR, just in general. He's very talented. I wouldn't put it past him to maybe be like, all right, let me not waste all of my energy, all my mental, my mental energy on all these races. I already got 3 wins. Like, let me just cruise. Let me just get into the playoffs. Let's all save our bodies, our minds, just so we can get to that point, and then we can really crank it up. I wouldn't put it past him to see that.
That's an interesting perspective. I mean, he's definitely on the upward trend again after, we had talked about since he ran the double there back in May. Just really haven't seen the same Kyle Larson, but I think Dover was a good bounce back for the 5 team, and Hendrick as a whole, really, to carry some good momentum forward into a track that he has won at last year, and probably wants a little bit of revenge. He's tired of hearing about Indianapolis, so now he's got a little bit more skin in the game to go out there and try and grab another win. Remember, this is only the second time we've returned to the oval configuration, if you will. We were running the Brickyard road course there for a couple years prior. So this is our second go at the Brickyard in the next gen car. So once again, only, one race, one set of notes to go off of here, which is going to kind of reset the playing field a little bit. I think it's just so tough to say. This is a race where you need equipment. We see a lot of brake failures here. There's a lot of high speed straightaways and a lot of braking. You got to manage your brakes, got to manage your tires, and fuel strategy, I think, is going to be huge here. But especially going into that final stage. We're 2.5 mile rectangle style oval there, Jeff. I do think we're going to see some more fuel mileage racing.
Absolutely going to be. It's just one of those tracks. I mean, I'm glad to see it off of the oval. I didn't really dig it at all on the road course there. But Kyle Larson, I just think I think really just mentally a little bit, not being able to run that double 2 years in a row now, and just kind of getting the shaft on it. It's kind of messed with his head, and I'm kind of thinking, I'm wondering if that's kind of what the slump is, because as we know, he's a fierce competitor, and he runs every single thing there is out there. And I thought he did really, really well during Dover here. I mean, being able to start P25 and finish P4, he had a really good day. So he just chipped away at it. And as we know, Kyle Larson's one of the best at doing that. He can just, one by one, every other lap, he's picking up another spot or two to get up there when he needs to be. So I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of Kyle Larson in the next few races.
I definitely could see it. I mean, we're getting, like I said, we're 5 races away from the playoffs. So if you're waiting to turn it up, now's probably the time to do so, especially like we mentioned, everybody on the cut line, pretty much, I mean, anybody in the field. I personally feel like we're at least going to get one more surprise winner that, hasn't already won yet this season. Maybe even two. I could see two. I could see somebody going out like Tyler Reddick maybe and winning here at Indy. But I mean, Kyle Larson's a really good guest too. I did want to say this though. I did not like the Indy Road Course for Cup, but I thought whenever Xfinity ran the Indy Road Course, I always thought it was a really good show. I always liked when Xfinity did it, but I'm very glad that it's back on the oval. I mean, it's just very traditional. Hopefully the Fords can have a better weekend this weekend. They didn't do too hot at Dover. I think what Blaney was like the only one in the top 10. I think he might not have even been in the top 10. So hopefully, especially with Penske, having I think what he owns Indy, so hopefully they can have a better race this weekend.
Yeah, and they have some pretty good results, over the years there, and of course last year as well. The Fords definitely have a better chance, I think, to go up against the Hendrick Chevys and the Gibbs Toyotas this week. We'll see if RFK is kind of there. So it'll be a kind of a good test. We've seen them run and show strength on super speedways, intermediates. We'll see. Indy's again, like I said, it's such a unique racetrack. It's hard to compare it to anywhere else we go, being that it's that flat. You'd think it'd run like a super speedway, but it's so flat. A lot of braking, tire management, fuel strategy. I'll be curious to see what old Chris Buescher and BK can do there. Is this an opportunity for Kyle Busch to steal a win? Who knows? But I agree. I think we'll see possibly two new winners between now and the playoffs, just based on the fact that we got to go to Daytona, the fact that we're going to Watkins Glen, and the fact that some of these guys that should have won already haven't, and like a Tyler Reddick or possibly even a Bubba Wallace upset. But for Indy, I think fantasy wise, Jeff, you kind of touched on it. It's that time of the year where if you have them, you got to run them. You got to maximize your points. Obviously you got a road course and a super speedway. You really have to think about it. I got 3 races that I can run my aces at. The William Byrons, the Christopher Bells, the Denny Hamlins. I'm down to like 1, 2 on some of those drivers, Jeff. So I think now's the time. Maximize your points. Go out there, smoke them if you got them.
Yeah, it really is. Like you mentioned, three technical races where you can definitely run your top guys. Because the road courses, we already know a lot of the guys that we can throw in there and save uses here in our our fantasy leagues. Because this is going to be an interesting last 5 races. It really is. Do we see 2 new drivers? I don't know. I don't know if we're going to see 2 new drivers or not. I mean, it could happen. But I think Tyler Reddick's the only one, like you said, that kind of go in there and just skate off of points and get in there. I don't think we're going to see that many new drivers in. So, and Tyler Reddick last year, hey, he finished P2. So might be a good track for him. And I believe, Sky, you're right. Penske, man, that guy's got a lot of money, owning the Indy circuit. And, it's just really cool to see him. I know Blaney, like I said, the only one that got in the top 10, got a P8 out of there. And then, P2 or P16 was the 2 car, and Logano and P14. But at least all 3 of their drivers are in the playoffs right now.
Definitely for sure. It probably definitely feels really good to be locked in. Hopefully Bowman can get a win and then he'll lock himself in with everybody else. But yeah, I like Indy. I think it'll be a good race. It'll be, I mean, it's probably going to be the usual suspects. The ones that are always pretty good, Denny, Larson. I don't know. I think I am going to go Ford. I don't, I keep bouncing back and forth. I want to say Blaney, but I feel like Blaney is such an obvious answer, but he's arguably probably the best Ford driver there is right now. Definitely the best at Penske. I mean, I hate to put him over Logano, but Blaney is he is such a comeback kid. I mean, whenever Logano has a bad day, I mean, it's just a bad day, but you're like, oh, Blaney flipped, his roof came off, da da da. Next thing you know, he finishes P3. Like, I feel like he's always coming back. So I think, I'm gonna trust my gut, and I'm gonna go. I think Ryan Blaney is probably gonna win at Indy this weekend.
I think that's a pretty good pick for sure. I could definitely see a Penske Ford up there. I went with Joe Gibbs Racing last week. That didn't, or that did pan out for me, but I chose Christopher Bell, so I'm not going to do that 2 weeks in a row. I think I'm going to go ahead and snag your pick, Jeff, before you take it. I think Kyle Larson finally turns it around, gets the win here in Indy, and is right back where we all know Kyle Larson is.
Well, you definitely took it away from me. I was going to give it up for old Kyle Larson in the 5 car for Indy, especially since he's going to run the Xfinity race in the 17 car. He's going to pull the double in one weekend that he couldn't pull off, for the Indy and the Coca-Cola 600. But since you're going to take them, I think, as well as Christopher Bell did run and just some, unfortunate luck, I'm going to take Seabell since you guys have taken my other two that I was going to pick.
Solid picks. I mean, I could see either one of those. Do we see like a Michael McDowell sneak a win in here, or, a Todd Gilliland, somebody wild like that? It could happen. I really think we're going to see a fuel mileage race this weekend. I could be wrong, but bearing any tire issues or a lot of yellows, late race yellows, I think that final stage, we're going to see a lot of green. Guys are going to try and split it. They're going to be stretching fuel mileage. We've seen it so many times here at Indy, and I think that's really the only way that we see like a one-off winner here is if someone outsmarts someone on fuel mileage. But every time these fuel mileage races happen, they somehow still have enough to do the burnout, drive it back to pit road, so it almost seems like they undercalculate their fuel mileage. But I feel good with it. I think that those are good picks across the board. Any last thoughts here before we turn the page to Indy?
Not a whole lot. I definitely, though, I feel like we're gonna get probably two new winners before that. I know we already said it, but I'm telling you, I just, like you said, Daytona, I definitely feel like it's gonna be a new winner, but probably Watkins Glen too. So we'll just have to see. I would definitely be worried if I was those guys, Bowman and under, because it's getting down to the crunch time.
Yeah, absolutely is. So, two new drivers, I could definitely see that in there. So, no, I think I'm good. I think I'm ready to rock and roll in Indy and see someone kiss the bricks.
Yeah, it's a great race. It definitely is prestigious. We remember when Jeff Gordon won the inaugural here in 1994. It's just so much history at this racetrack, not only on the Indy side, but the history at NASCAR has created. We have action from the ARCA Menard Series and the Craftsman Truck Series. They're going to be at IRP, which is kind of that short track that Indy runs a few miles away from the Brickyard. And then we have Xfinity action and Cup action there from the Brickyard. So it should be a fantastic weekend of racing. We will all be back next Monday night to break down all this madness. It'll be the final race for TNT before we turn the page over to the NBC team, which I believe will be Lee Diffie and company. So we'll have a lot to break down there. And so be sure to follow us on all social media platforms. Never miss out on an episode of MTG. Subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on. Follow NASCAR Sky at NASCAR Sky. We're on to the Brickyard, y'all. Someone's kissing the bricks. And until then,
Smash the gas.
I feel the engine screaming back. I feel the thrill.